Greetings and welcome to the Transform Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. It is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, and this is episode 107. And welcome back to the podcast, guys. Last week we checked in with you guys on episode 106 about not being boring with your headlines. Of course, hopefully that was not a boring headline from your perspective. Basically just use that episode to kind of give you guys some ideas or some guidance on how to take what I would call a feature-based headline, like a factual headline or a we do X, Y, or Z type of headline, or we can do X, Y, or Z for you type of headline, and turn it into a benefit headline that speaks to what the customer receives or how the customer benefits or is advantaged by your content or your service or your product or whatever the case may be. So that's really what we covered last week on March 28th with episode 106. And so today, guys, had a fairly economical episode for you guys. I just want to kind of focus on one particular thing that crossed my desk today from Social Media Today. Of course, one of the best newsletters that I personally like to follow for social media news. If you guys are doing your own marketing, you would really do well to follow Social Media Today and check in on their daily updates. And also they have nice little weekend recaps if you only want to check in once a week or so. But if you're doing your own marketing, you're trying to stay on top of everything in this space, that's one of the best places you can go to do it. So that's what I like to do personally, amongst other things. And today, in the Social Media Today update, which actually published yesterday, was an update to Instagram that I think is kind of interesting for you guys. And to be quite frank with you, we haven't really discussed Instagram a whole lot lately. In fact, I'm just looking back over the last 10, 20 episodes, and it looks like we have to go all the way back, and I'm specifically talking about Instagram, episode 77 back in July last year. I talked about how Instagram, was kind of being accused of morphing into TikTok. So that was from midsummer last year, and what's ironic is today's episode is actually a good follow-up to that episode, because the update that Instagram is experimenting with, I want to talk to you about today, guys, is actually something that kind of builds some space between them and TikTok. And so let me read you a couple excerpts from this article. Again, you guys can find it on Social Media Today or in the newsletter if you get the newsletter in your inbox every day. It says, quote, Instagram's experimenting with a new discovery element that would enable you to view a collaborative feed of content from accounts you and a friend follow in common, providing another way to enhance engagement, unquote. Says, quote, the new Discover Content Together option would add a new feed of content that you've both interacted with or from profiles that you both follow, which would then give you another way to connect over mutual interests, unquote. Goes on to say you would also be able to share future posts from those profiles and interests, which could then generate even more engagement opportunities in the app. And then they finish that thought saying here, Instagram's been looking to find more ways to lean into direct messages and private interactions as a means to boost overall usage. Instagram's now trying to establish a more unique value proposition over, say, TikTok by highlighting how you can also interact with friends on IG better than you can in other apps, unquote. So you say, okay, that's great, Chris. Sounds like a really interesting update. What does it have to do with me and my business? Well, a couple thoughts here, guys. I think number one, you got to look at this against the backdrop of the potential banning of TikTok. It's the elephant in the room. It's something that personally, I think just personal opinion-wise and purely from a marketing perspective, is going to be very hurtful to a lot of individuals who are leveraging the very unique characteristics of TikTok, the way that they connect you to an interest graph, and then to the audience versus a social graph that relies on followers and popularity. There's some real key elements of TikTok that are not present on other platforms that could really be a big missing hole here for a lot of marketers and a lot of small business owners and so forth. So the very fact that TikTok is teetering on the brink of being, extinct in the United States, and I'm speaking specifically to U.S. Audience members here, you have to think about Instagram. If you're doing TikTok or you were gonna do TikTok and you're not doing Instagram or you weren't going to do Instagram, now you got to rethink that a little bit. So that's kind of like step one here is kind of operating against that backdrop. I think the second thing to consider here, guys, is the fact that Instagram, just generally speaking, is making strides or taking strides towards differentiating itself, putting some new features in, looking for ways to create value for account holders that's different from, let's say, TikTok, or certainly other platforms as well could fall into that category. So I would say, big macro, watch out for the TikTok ban. Definitely worth learning your way around Instagram. The second point, Instagram creating innovation inside the platform is a good thing in general, and it's likely to benefit you in the aggregate. And point number three, very specifically to this update, is if you're in, let's say you're in financial services industry, right? And you are just kind of operating willy-nilly, you're posting to your feed, you're posting reels, you're posting stories, you're blasting stuff out, hoping that somebody's going to come across it and interact with you. Okay, that's a strategy. It's not a great strategy, but if you're pumping lots of volume out there, that's better than nothing. But this update here, this new discovery element, is going to allow you to make connections on the platform. And I would say, this may be particularly helpful at the individual level. Let's say, not necessarily posting from a corporate account, but let's say from your individual professional account. But don't necessarily mean to put boundaries on it, but I think you can kind of look at it first from that perspective. If you have an account on there that's representing yourself professionally, or maybe that's your whole company account, is your personal, individual, professional account, the ability to sort of get into tighter circles of followers and engagement partners, if you will, where your content is going to be highly relevant, highly contextual to them, and vice versa, is only going to be a good thing. And I think, you can look at this also from a standpoint of like referrals. Like, you have content in the financial services space, let's say on taxes, and somebody else has content in the financial services space on financial planning. Well, you may be able to connect with each other easier now and produce referrals for each other. Okay, so I would also liken this, it's not a perfect analogy, but I'd liken this to, let's say, groups on LinkedIn. You have your LinkedIn feed, you're posting content, you're producing volume, that's great, but you're going to, at times, want to take certain content and post it within groups on LinkedIn. So those groups that are highly contextual to that content are, number one, just going to be more likely to want to engage with it because of the context, and number two, it's a smaller group that you're trying to nose your way into, right? So you're not competing with tens of thousands of other posts or whatever the ungodly number is, but you're only competing with who else is in that group. So again, some groups are very, very large. No question about that. But for certain groups that are a little more niche oriented or not as well populated, you're going to have a much easier time of standing out in that group on LinkedIn when you post like that. So completing the analogy, if you think about it on Instagram, being able to get into these tighter circles and these more closely held interest loops will allow you to put your content in front of more contextually relevant eyeballs. Okay? So what I want you guys to do is, if you're already on Instagram, I'd start looking out for this. And they say it's experimental, so I don't think you're going to see it right now, or you may not see it for a little while, or if you have seen it, would love to hear from you guys and how your first impressions of it are. But I would say if you're not on Instagram or you're not doing much on Instagram, you may want to change that. If you're making short form videos, get them up on Reels. If you're posting content to your feed, make sure it goes into your stories. Just keep cranking out the content there so you can start playing around with what works. And then when the time comes, as this new feature comes into play, then you can go ahead and engage with that. You can engage on that level with the content you're already producing. It's not like you're going to be starting from zero. So if you're already on Instagram and you're going pretty hard there, I would say keep doing that, keep pushing that, and keep looking out for this feature and try it out when it comes. It could be a difference maker for you. Okay, guys? So I wanted to break that news to you. Again, this was published April 3rd on socialmediatoday.com, and the title of the article was Instagram tests new process to help users engage over interests in common, unquote. So if you need to look up the exact title, that's what it is. So going to leave you with that, guys. Episode 107 in the bag. Hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you get over the hump here tomorrow cleanly as we head towards the next weekend. And we'll be back with you guys again no later than next week. Might have another episode for you later this week, but more likely would be next week where we go to episode 108. But in the meantime, check us out on LinkedIn and Facebook, Pransform, and also check out the website at pransform.com. Please subscribe to our podcast and share it with whomever you think would benefit from this information. With that said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. It's Christopher Anastasia for Pransform. Hope everybody has a great Tuesday night, and we will talk to you guys again soon. Thanks, guys. Good night.